Gimel Amud Beis 3b, and we were discussing this practice of King David to spend the night studying Torah. And we talked about how the first half of the night he would study Torah, and the second half of the night he would begin praising Hashem. And we talked about the difference between the meaning of the first half of the night and the second half of the night. The Talmud now goes on to question, how did King David know, how did David HaMelech know when is midnight? Look at the watch and know when it's midnight. Okay, you can't do that. The Gemara asks, V'David mihava yoda palga delelia emas. How did David know? Did David then know when midnight is? Hashta Moshe Rabbeinu lo yoda, lo have yoda. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know when midnight is. Dichsiv ko amar Hashem kachatzos halayla. Going back to when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that the slaying of the firstborn would come at midnight. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he told Pharaoh about this, he said it would be approximately midnight. Why did he say approximately midnight? So the rabbis explained that it's because people can't determine the exact moment of midnight. But only God can determine the exact moment of midnight. It's interesting that the Talmud refers here to Moshe Rabbeinu not knowing when midnight was, when it seems that the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu said that was because Paro didn't know when midnight was. But nonetheless, you could answer that Moshe Rabbeinu himself, if he would be able to determine the exact moment of midnight, he would have been able to have someone point out to Paro, or to in some way indicate to Paro that this is the exact moment. All right, but nonetheless, I think that fundamentally the Talmud is going to a general point, which is that the middle of the night is an indeterminate moment in the human experience. I think it's referring to a larger point. We talked about yesterday this idea that the first half of the night is recovery from the day before. And the second half of the night is fortification for the next day. But in another sense, we might say that and along the theme that we've been coming over the previous pages, which is that darkness, night refers to a time of spiritual darkness, a time of fear, a time of danger. And the first half of the night, the danger is getting increasingly worse. And in the second half of the night, it's only a matter of time before it's dawn. Every moment that goes by, the sky is getting progressively lighter. And this tells us that a person can be in the very darkest moment of their life, but actually it can either be, it could be the second to darkest moment of their life, or it could be the second most dark moment of their life, either because they're heading towards midnight or because they're 1 second after midnight. And there's no way for a human being to know if this moment in which they find themselves, if they've turned the corner. We don't have that experience. The fact of the matter is that after midnight, we're on a one-way trip to dawn. But it's still at the moment of midnight, meaning an hour or two after midnight, you already hear the birds chirping, you already know that it's coming. But in that moment of Chatzos Laila, or the exact moment of midnight, there is no part of the human experience that indicates that we're moving towards dawn. And yet we are. And this is the question I think that the Talmud is asking, is that we know as a general principle, and that, by the way, the theme as it fits in terms of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Moses telling Pharaoh that the slaying of the firstborn will be midnight, is a very powerful one in that context. Because it's also a message to the Jewish people, which says you're still in Egypt. You're still surrounded by the Egyptians. but it's already midnight. You're already free, you just don't know it yet. And so that's, I think, the message in that context. But you can't know it. We're not supposed to know it. If we would know it, we would already be free. We would already be actually free. This is the nature of the human condition, that we go through these journeys, that we find ourselves in darkness and we're really in the light and we just don't know it yet, and we come to the realization slowly, and then we look back and we realize that at that time that we thought we were in darkness, we were really already free. And that's a profoundly enlightening, pardon the pun, awareness that gives us the sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be found, that God can be found in places where we would never think to look for him, but that we should realize that he's already there. That God can be present in darkness is a magical thing that we can usually only see hindsight. As God told Moshe Rabbeinu, you cannot see my face, but you can see me from behind. So the Talmud is therefore asking David HaMelech, how, if we know that in general human beings, even Moshe Rabbeinu, the master of redemption, couldn't necessarily pinpoint to the exact moment, how does David HaMelech know? How does King David know this exact moment? The Talmud says something fascinating. David Simonale, Simona Havale. David had a sign by which he could determine that it's midnight. Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida. Rav Chana, the son of Bizna, said in the name of Rav Shimon Chasida, Rav Shimon the Pious, Kinor hayatolui lamala mimitaso shel David. King David had a musical instrument hanging above his bed. V'kevan shehigia chatzos laila, when midnight came, baruach tzefonis v'noshvos bo, the northern wind begins to blow at midnight, v'hoyamenagein me'elov, and that musical instrument played because its opening was facing north, and so as the northern wind came, it began to resonate and play music. And v'hoya David Yoshev v'osek baTorah ad shehigialu amura shachar, and David would come and study Torah, but as we learned last night, he would engage in praise of Hashem. His Torah study would take the form of praise of Hashem until morning. So it seems a very mystical story, this idea of the musical instrument hanging above David HaMelech's bed. But I think what it might be saying is that it's possible to, while it's not possible to know it in a conscious, cognitive sense, there are two elements to this story of the musical instrument playing by itself. There's a magical aspect to it. It's a musical instrument that plays by itself. And I think this indicates that, first of all, there's a reliance on faith. There's a reliance on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person has to know that I don't know it, but there's something beyond my ability that can there's something there is a realm of consciousness that exists beyond my ability to be conscious. And that, of course, is what we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We refer to Hashem. Hashem's thoughts are not our thoughts. And we can be aware that there is a plan, and there is an organization, and there is a consciousness to the world that we can in no way conceive of. And so this is, I think, the magical, mystical, miraculous element. We have to have emunah. We have to have faith. And the other point, I think, is in the fact that it's music itself. It doesn't refer to just noise. It refers to music. And I think this might evoke this idea that the Zohar HaKadosh says that no mind can grasp God. Lav mocha leis machshava tfisa bei. No thought can grasp God. Aval nitpas ihu bireuta deliba. but he can be grasped. God can be reached through an awakened heart. And so it's not, if you try to calculate mentally this human experience, the presence of God in darkness, it's not possible. But with a niggin of faith, with a song that's stirring the heart, and that's connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connecting to God from a visceral place, from an emotional place, from a faith place, from a spiritual place, it's possible to be present with Hashem, even bahastara shebesocha hastara, even in the concealment of the darkest kind. So, Yehi Ratzon, we should be zocha that, look, it already feels like it's over, but it's not yet over. It's just a matter of time until it all settles down. But certainly, for many of us, the pandemic is more than a health crisis, and the ripple effects that it can have on society and on people's financial state and on the relationships and all kinds of things. It's hard to know if we're before midnight or after midnight. And it's a time for us really to be awake with our emunah, to be awake with our faith, and to be awake with our nigunim, and to connect to Hashem with our heart, because our brain has no idea what's going on.